Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavang, it does. They need me.
Welcome, End of Dragons Daily 52, the daily show in which we discuss all fun things about End of Dragons, the upcoming expansion. Today is going to be a specific topic really on the lore, and that's Aurene in the X-Pack. Now, I never really announced this topic to you guys in advance, but we kind of talked a little bit about Aurene yesterday, and we've just been talking about lore a lot, and a ton of you guys are really interested in that. There's a lot of big, meaty comments to get into on this idea, and I know some of you guys are probably rolling your eyes a little bit right now, thinking, oh, Aurene, is she really that interesting of a topic? I think now, yes, she is. I think she is now that she's a goddamn elder dragon, and the game is constantly in this weird place where it's like they have to justify why this ungodly powerful ally of ours is not getting involved and so on. I do think that Aurene has to have a lot of big moments in the upcoming story that eventually will wipe her out. Whether that's in a nice way and she's just off having her own adventures, or in a sad way where she dies, or whatever, I don't know. But I do think that they have to sort of move on from the idea of Aurene being with us if we're going to enter a new phase of storytelling with Guild Wars. And then there's the question, how do they do that? Is that going to be in the expansion, and how does that look? The fact she's not even in the trailer audio, I think, says a lot. And so let's see what everybody thinks. First of all, we've got Bradley Spies, who says, a minor modification to the idea that Aurene will sacrifice herself could be that Aurene is seriously messed up by the Jormordus fallout. Jormordus, I like that phrase. And that, oh, by the way, the footage in the background today, guys, is, look, I think it's horrendous, really, but I'm trying to be kind of diverse in the stuff that you're watching. So I'm doing DRMs on a ranger. I really want to find a fun, like, longbow ranger experience in the open world. It was kind of super boring and weird newbie looking gameplay, I think, but it's a fun idea. So anyway, you'll see me shooting things with a longbow on two different flavors of ranger, one really techie and one really grassy and kind of nature themed, the new ranger that I made recently. Anyway, so Aurene is seriously messed up by the Jormordus fallout, and that takes us to Cantha for some sort of last-ditch effort, either to try and find a way to save her, or to finish things with the deep sea dragon before Aurene is able to function as a prism, etc. That could fit well with the hint about the state of the world being the thing that drives us to Cantha, but we don't realize it at first. Aurene doesn't have to show signs of distress immediately, i.e. during the conclusion of the Icebrood saga. She could get progressively worse over the coming months. Wouldn't it be wild if they just quietly dropped updates into the Eye of the North, physically and or mentally? And at some point it gets bad enough that we realize we have to do X or Y. And how it looks like we're going to Cantha. The point being, I think Aurene being alive can do as much or more in terms of providing impetus for us to take a big step, like going to Cantha. It turns her into a ticking time bomb and justifies pushing the dragon story to its conclusion. I've said in the past, I like the idea of giving us a bittersweet ending where, at the end of the expansion, she ultimately can't maintain her current form and, most importantly from a writing perspective, her personality. Whether she dies or ascends or becomes a mountain of crystal or any other conclusion you like. It also gives ArenaNet a reasonable way to justify avoiding the recurrence of the Elder Dragon threat, with the magic instability threat, etc. in the future. Aurene did something and gave her prison powers to Tyria to solve that magic problem permanently as far as our timeline is concerned. So now the game can go and focus on entirely new things. You get the idea, it could be written well or poorly, but at the end of the day, I think it ties things up. Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed a lot of really interesting stuff. For people a little bit out of the loop, what you should understand is there was an interview very recently which explained Icebrood Saga does not lead straight into End of Dragons. There's going to be like a period of some interim content, it looks like, and then we'll go to End of Dragons. And the only thing we really know is that the state of the world at the beginning of End of Dragons is kind of the result of Icebrood Saga, and that's kind of it. I've got a lot of theories about what that interim content could be. And the idea that during that middle period, you know, I'm talking about a period this year from like late April, you know, because the patch is late April, till maybe late summer. Okay, we're talking about that era of the year, maybe about a third of this year. During that period of time, yeah, maybe we could continue getting these conversations updating in the Eye of the North where Aurene is going a little bit mental. I think it's really easy to write fun Aurene dialogue at the moment because she's such a compelling and interesting character with so many interesting perspectives, especially now that she's been exploring the scrying pool and the Eye of the North and so on. And we've already seen they did this. They did this with Banger. if you actually look at the way that the Icebreed Saga went, we had Drizzlewood 2, and at the point of Drizzlewood 2, what had really happened is we had glimpsed Jormag. That is where the story was. And then it seems that from Drizzlewood 2, we go suddenly the finale's on us. Suddenly the devs are all on End of Dragons. Suddenly Champions is all that's left. And they had this monumental job to do, which is to move from that first little appearance of Jormag and Drizzlewood 2, ultimately Char's Civil War stuff, to the conclusion of this whole thing. Jormag dead, maybe Primordus dead as well, and so on. They had to do all that really fast, and you see one of the ways in which they developed the plot very, very quickly was immediately after Drizzlewood 2, we had those Bangar conversations. And it was only really with the Bangar conversations that hints about Primordus started getting dropped in, and then immediately Champions 1, Primordus is there. Like, it was very abrupt in a way, but the Bangar conversations helped to make it feel less abrupt. And I think Aurene progressively having these extra conversations where she's going a bit mad, I think it would be very effective. And yeah, this idea that it makes her a ticking time bomb, we have to resolve this, could work super well. And, you know, that then leads us back to Glint's legacy and maybe what information she shared with Kunavang. And Cantha seems like the likely place that we'll end up going. There's a lot of reasons that Cantha could be good, particularly with regard to Glint's legacy, I think. And the idea that maybe she had this whole madness thing in mind. I mean, Glint was the scion of Kraukatorix. She knew a lot, presumably, about Elder Dragon madness, and maybe that's just not been displayed to us so far. I do hope that the interim content contains a little bit more. We had this idea a few days ago of the Aether Blades being involved there, being introduced. Maybe they are a part of our bridge to Cantha. Maybe it can all happen at once. But that idea, especially of them returning, I think feels like a perfect fit. And I hope it wouldn't just be Aurene focused. A few little conversations in the Eye of the North, I would want a bit more than that. And I think most of the player base would too. Depending on how long we're waiting, obviously. And depending on how effectively ArenaNet does marketing and press for the X-Pack. I am of the belief that the game doesn't actually need many updates at all, as long as there's good marketing. But hey, who knows? Aiki says, at this point, I'm quite convinced that Malik's tree is dead. Perhaps used as a vessel for the mouth of Morgemoth, only for it to die on one of its spikes every 2 hours, I suppose. If we are to assume that Malik was able to resist Morgemoth's calling, which I do hope is the case, ArenaNet could have some fun bringing him back as a unique Sylvari whose pale tree is dead. Did he feel anything when it died? What does he feel now? I of course see no reason why he couldn't have moved on adventuring after the end of Heart of Thorns, and if that brought him to another pale tree in Cantha, all the better, I suppose. I think this is fantastic. This is a great motivation for him to go to the Echovald Forest in search of another tree, but you would think he would end up at the Grove a little bit quicker, right? Because, I mean, the Grove is very close. The idea of being able to talk to a Sylvari that is completely disconnected from the tree that birthed it is fun. Maybe it leads a little bit into the idea of the Soundless. There's another thing you want to think about as well, which is right at the end of Heart of Thorns. Like, the reason we had to kill Traherne was because, like, if there was even any potential vessel around, Morgemoth could use it and come back. And so we had to deal with Traherne there. It's funny to think that if this other tree did survive, that would have been a lot of opportunities for Morgemoth to sort of come back over there, right? I do not believe for a second the devs would ever do this, but it is funny to think that a reintroduction of Malik and a story about new pale trees could actually serve as a platform to bring Morgemoth back if they wanted. Like a dormant Morgemoth is somehow lying in waiting at another tree. There'll be no reason to do this, and no one's that excited about Morgemoth to rehash it and stuff, but it's fun to think about the potential of where they might go. I also think, honestly, the pale tree can be killed, and it's still a location for us to visit of intrigue, you know. In fact, in some ways, it's even better. You might say, oh, I'm really excited to go to another pale tree. But then, why are you excited about that? What, just have another experience like the Grove? Well, no, let's see one that's like petrified, as I would suggest maybe the one in the Echovald Forest had been. Or maybe we'll find one that's just dead and rotted away now. You know, the pale tree is kind of a giant flower as well, so I think there's fun stuff they could do with that, especially the idea of climbing to its absolute heights, something we can't in the Grove, but probably as far as the engine's concerned, and the mounts and the new climbing capabilities and stuff we have these days, the devs could really explore a lot more. So yeah, you could have the pale tree be dead and just a few remaining Sylvari squatting there. That doesn't diminish my excitement for it whatsoever. Terrafast says, I disagree with the Aurene sacrificing herself if she consumes too much magic idea. Given her prismatic nature and Glint's own aspects, I foresee her either dividing herself or she creates eggs. and deposits the energy into them like bloodstones. If she divides herself, maybe it's not a full split. We either get a multi-headed Aurene or a group of Aurenes. Either way, most of the time, all the heads speak in unison, but occasionally one head will speak or one head will start a sentence and swap what it's speaking in mid-sentence. If she creates eggs, I foresee it being a whole room full and not just a handful, like 6, with her telling us that it will take thousands of years for these eggs to hatch, but once they do, they will help her manage the balance of magic, but none will ever be as powerful as herself or the other Elder Dragons. Dude, honestly, I think you're onto some real gold here. I would love to see this story. I think this is brilliant. And it kind of leads back to something I mentioned on an End of Dragons Daily recently, or perhaps it was a stream, in which I kind of remarked, you know, in Guild Wars 1, they did the Glint's Lair mission, where you meet Glint for the first time. And you look around the room and there's tons of eggs all over the place. There's loads of them. And then they just kind of ignore the idea of the eggs until way later in Eye of the North, where you're defending like one of them. Turns out to be Vlast, who died in Path of Fire. And then there's this idea of Aurene's egg. 2 of them are really in the story right now. But there was a whole chamber of eggs. And the devs have never really like looked back at that or like talked about that much. Now when we've got the idea of Mother and Kralkatorrik and then Glint and Aurene, like these very like clear like dragon lineages, and they're all such powerful, such epic creatures. You look back at this like super like casual moment in Guild Wars 1 where there's a chamber full of them, and it looks like sloppy. It looks weird and like it doesn't make any sense. So what you're suggesting in your idea that the ultimate resolution to this story actually involves a ton of eggs again, I think that this works really well because it kind of like embraces that chamber of Glint's back then. They can even formally explain that one of Glint's ideas was to hatch a ton of her own science. There were going to be loads of dragon replacements, but just for one reason or another, all these eggs got destroyed or lost and so on. Maybe, I think this would be amazing as well. What if, just as we had Vlast in Path of Fire, in the Crystal Desert region, just as we have Aurene in the jungle region, wouldn't it be cool if Glint had distributed some other eggs around, and there's going to be one down in Cantha Kunavang's been looking after? There's another Scion down there. Maybe there are Scions in some of these super remote continents that we haven't actually visited yet. Maybe that's some of our reason to go to those continents in the new era of the game. I mean, the idea End of Dragons and these creatures would presumably still be dragons, so who knows. But this idea of lots of eggs, I think it would really just tie it all in, and it makes sense that these creatures have a smaller proportion of the magic. The one real big wriggle here, and through a couple of the comments today, we've kind of glossed over it. It's the idea of like, how do we stop all the magic condensing back into just a couple of select apex predators? That really feels like it needs to be answered on a very tangible, like not hand wavy, not Deus Ex Machina, not just pull something out of our ass way. Like there needs to be some real proper step to that. And the thing is, to give an answer to that, the devs also really need to provide a lot more exposition as to the actual origins of these Elder Dragons. Like so far, we in the community pretty much just presume that they have gained their status by acquiring magic just like anyone might. Just like we saw Matthias gather a ton of magic and then get driven insane by it. You know, maybe we can assume that these other creatures over the various thousands of years have done the same, but it's just an assumption. And that's where like Mother comes in. So there's a lot this expansion really needs to explain. But an ultimate resolution that Aurene doesn't like kill herself or whatever, or be destroyed or go mad, but she just divides it all into these eggs. And now she is bereft of power herself because it's all within them. I think it's interesting. But then you kind of got this idea of like we need to protect the eggs for hundreds, if not thousands of years while we wait. I don't know. But I like it. I think there's something workable in there. Next, we've got Nudzaz, who says, maybe after we kill all the Elder Dragons, the Guild Wars logo will change from a dragon to a waffle. I don't know. This just made me laugh, all right? We do so many big, long, serious walls of text. This made me laugh. A waffle. Why a waffle? Of all the dumb things you could have said, like, I don't know, a potato, for example, you said a waffle. I mean, there are potato waffles. Ismail says, hey WP, do you think that us killing the dragons so easily undermines pre-established lore? According to the timeline, when the Elder Dragons last awoke, whole races became extinct. Civilizations were devoured. And now we're killing off the dragons as if they are mere thorns needed to be plucked out. According to the wiki, the dragon's awakening lasts for several centuries before they fall asleep again. We killed 3 dragons within 6 years, yet the ancient races couldn't kill a single one in centuries. Is that a testament as to how incompetent the races were 11,000 years ago? Or is it a consequence of this being a game where you constantly have to up the ante so that the player feels important? But how can dragons be compelling antagonists if that's the case? This is a great question and a brilliant observation. You're right, this feels kind of iffy and rubbish. I think to a certain degree this was always inevitable. If they released Guild Wars 2 as a game about hunting down these apex predators, the Elder Dragons, we were gonna kill them, right? And I mean, even for when Guild Wars 2 came out, what were people's expectations? It would take 10 years IRL to do it. 10 years IRL to beat these dragons is an insane length of time for us in the real world, enjoying a product, something in media. But 10 years is still an insanely short, unrealistic, really, according to the established lore, space of time to go from like a Zaitan kill into any of the other dragons. Just 10 years apart, 2 kills? That's crazy, right? But, I mean, I think this was always inevitable. I actually think this is a little bit of lack of foresight from the writers. And again, this is one of the hardest things about MMOs. You need to have so much foresight with so much stuff. I think there was a way through this. And the way through this was that whatever mechanism we used to defeat Zaitan had to be applicable to all of them. The Achilles heel that should have been discovered with Zaitan should have been an Achilles heel that unlocked all of the dragons. There would still be struggles and specific stories for us to go through and specific challenges that make the dragons feel unique. But that one crucial fact of the downfall of the Elder Dragons applies to all of them. And now it's kind of, we can swallow that pill because it's just the ancient races never found this one thing. And we've managed to figure it out. And, you know, that was the duty of Core Guild Wars 2, to properly present that to us. And as you all know, hopefully, if you've been watching my analyses and discussion over the years, Core Guild Wars 2 failed at that. You know, it did provide an idea of, you know, taking his magic, firing it back at him, utilizing the megalith cannon with the research from Professor Gore and, you know, the construction of the pack to logistically get at the dragon to deliver this and so on. But then the devs kind of like blatantly threw that away with Heart of Thorns for this cinematic idea of the airships being shot down over the Maguma jungle. And they introduced like the Pokemon weakness system and stuff, which just has so many problems and feels so rubbish to me. But this is one of them. Now it feels really weird that we... and not only just the short time span, but the fact that the commander is kind of the be all and end all. The one thing I would say that's kind of nice is now that Aurene's in the picture, Aurene is kind of that thing. Like, we can say Aurene is why we got rid of Kraukatoric. Aurene will be why we get rid of Primordus. Aurene will be why we get rid of Jormag. Aurene will be why we get rid of the Deep Sea Dragon. You could say that because the ancient races never had an Elder Dragon on their hands. And there was a very specific setup of things going on to get that Elder Dragon in the hands of the free peoples of Tyria, largely in thanks to Glint. So you can say that, but it's still awkward with the Zaitan Mordramoth bit, and then Kraukatoric or Aurene coming so closely afterwards too. But again, it was always an inevitability. I just think the devs had to be very careful thinking about this stuff. And you got to remember, right, like what we're talking about now, in the context of everything they set up and all the story they had to do, how important was this? Yeah, it looks like a wriggle now. And yeah, it might play on some of our minds now, but they had a million priorities and things to focus on. And who's to say whether really paying a lot of due diligence and attention to this rather than something else was the right call? Lastly, this comment looks kind of weird now because we kind of talked around this a bit, I guess. Guizmop said, didn't Glint plan on several scions to eat the magic, like one for each dragon? And that's why there's a Kesho Vlast in the Crystal Desert near Krauk, Tyria and Aurene and Mordramoth. Will we get another Exalted City in Cantha? That would suggest that Aurene can't actually absorb it all, even if her prismatic nature allows her to digest different types of magic. Maybe she'll hatch eggs to split up her power. Well, there's a few things to say. Yes, I think that there could be an Exalted City in Cantha. I think that would be a really cool idea. I think that would be a cool idea even for some of the other major continents. And, you know, I put pretty good money, actually, on the idea that it will show up. And that, you know, Kunavang's been helping out whatever scions over there. However, this idea of Aurene being prismatic and able to take the magics that drew Kraukatoric mad. Maybe I need to replay Season 4, but I'm not sure whether Glint really had all of that fully planned out. My understanding was that Aurene kind of has this capability because of the unique circumstances of her birth. Like, she is of the Kralkatoric line, but as she is being born, she was infused with a ton of dying Morgemoth magic. Like, how could Glint have predicted that exact timing of that dragon to wake that egg up in that way? And then there's obviously all the Balthazar magic that's mixing in there as well. Did Glint really set all of that up like dominoes? I don't really think that that's fair to say so. And the whole time, you know, there's been lingering Zaitan magic around, which maybe she's had her share of, particularly with the consumption of Palawa Joko, a lich. She definitely got a lot more undeady stuff. Did Glint anticipate all of that and just know the whole time? Well, if she did, then, like, why isn't Glint just doing it herself? Why didn't she just take the magic herself and not go mad? And again, why is Aurene different to Kralkatoric? I think that's a very real question, and a question the devs even want us to be asking as well right now. The tricky thing is to know what story the devs are going with. Are we still looking for scions and replacements? Or are we looking for Aurene to handle it all at this point as a pretty... Because don't forget as well, when Aurene consumed all the Kralkatoric stuff, she doesn't look like Kralkatoric. She's not stormy and crystalline. Well, she's kind of crystalline, but her form of branding and stuff, she's her own thing. She's totally unique. So it's hard to say. I wish a lot of this stuff was more tangibly explained. This is just more symptoms of the fact that each Living World release and every expansion, they do not get enough exposition in there. They do not get enough dialogue. There needs to be more clicking through unvoiced dialogue that we can actually enjoy and really expand on and explore the subject material. That has been a problem with Guild Wars ever since the launch of Core. I really do feel it. Well, there you have it, guys. That's End of Dragons Daily for today. Give me your lore comments down below. And again, thank you to everyone joining the guild. I've had a few of you message saying, oh, I think it's too late. It's not too late. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm recruiting into the guild as best as possible right up until End of Dragons. So we're just building and building and building and building and building. It's a brilliant time to get in even today, and it'll be a brilliant time tomorrow, next week, right up till the X-Pack. In fact, already activity seems to be going really, really well. So thanks very much to everyone for that. Thanks to everybody enjoying Ghost of Ascalon after I linked it a couple of times as well. I think I'll do a different playlist today. Today I'm going to link a series I did very recently, and I worked really hard on it, but I feel like people don't quite get how interesting it is, and that's the Dungeon playlist, where I go through all the lore and the mechanics and the fun stuff about the Guild Wars 2 dungeons. It's especially fun to watch, I think, if you get to the Arar episodes. The ones on Arar talk a lot more about Glint and the Altar of Glorst and cleansing dragon corruption and just what all these ancient races did back then and where their genius was compared to ours as we actually slay the dragons. So that might be interesting for you guys today. There's going to be a link on screen in 2 seconds. Give me your comments and I'll see you tomorrow.